Hey buddy, it's Peter, and this is the Yamaha MT-03. This is part of a legendary line of bikes from Yamaha. A lot of good things in this class, and what I'm going to do is talk about this bike in particular, and I'm going to try to get into the details that the other videos aren't talking about, but there's two things you should probably know. One, I love small displacement bikes, and two, I'm going to be covering more and more of these on this channel in the near future and into the coming weeks and months as the 2024s get announced. So I'm kind of covering my bases here with what's in for 2023, but everything new for 2024 I'm also going to cover, not just in this brand, but basically every brand of small displacement bikes that I can find. So if you're into that kind of thing and you want to know more, make sure you subscribe to this channel. And of course I want to thank McLean Sports because they give me complete access to their entire product line. So if you want to know more about this bike that I don't cover in this video, just let me know in the comments below and I'll make sure I come back to this bike both in the comment section and in future videos to make sure that you get the answers that you want. So thanks to McLean Sports. They're here in Fredericton, New Brunswick. If you want to see them in person, swing by, and of course the link is in the description to check out their website and check out everything they've got. All right, let's get going with this review. So the first thing we should do is cover what this is and where it fits in the lineup and how Yamaha kind of sees it. So first of all, the MT-whatever lineup is a pretty popular lineup because they have great engines, they have great handling, and they're just a lot of fun to drive compared to everything in its class. And the MT-03 is the exact same thing. Now, the sort of hidden secret here is that smaller displacement bikes are often looked upon by manufacturers as sort of entry-level bikes so you can move up. That is very much what this bike is. This is an MT-03. They want to get you into that MT-07 type lineup, but this is a great bike to learn on, and I'm of the opinion that a lot of people can stay with smaller displacement bikes. Having said that, this is not as fast as an MT-07. This is not the same bike, and there's very much that feeling that you'll have this for a time and you'll sell it and you'll move on. So with that in mind, we're going to look at it from an entry-level perspective, but I also, because I am a fan of small displacement bikes, will talk about this bike as a bike that someone like myself would love to have maybe as a second bike or even as my only bike if, want to keep insurance rates down, keep some money in the pocket, but keep a bike around in the garage. So that's how I'm going to cover it. If that's my bias is showing, then that is what it is. Yeah, let's get going. We'll start with the front. So if you've seen my reviews before, I always say if you look at the front wheel area of a motorcycle, you're really going to tell what the manufacturer intended this bike to be. And right off the bat, you've got something pretty special for the class. These are upside down forks. So big thing with upside down forks is it gives you a little bit less unsprung weight. That's going to help with handling. That's going to help with overall ride. That's just a nice thing to have. There's not any nice sport bike that doesn't have this. There are plenty of sport bikes that don't have upside down forks. So you right away sit there and you can say, okay, I see where Yamaha put their money, that it's into suspension, it's into the handling of this bike. And then it also creates a stiffer section up front. So the upside down forks, less unsprung weight, stiffer up top where you have a lot of forces. Right away, that means handling was a focus here. A couple other little different things. You're not gonna see it on the camera there, but the paint here has a nice metallic to it. A lot of time on entry-level bikes, they cheap out and make it look cheap. This doesn't look cheap at all. Now, where you will see some differences is in the brakes. You have a single disc brake here instead of a double disc brake. You don't need a double disc brake for two reasons. One, the bike itself is quite light. Two, you're not going to be going 250 kilometers an hour on this thing, and you have everything you need. You also have the ABS ring in there. So single disc, almost I think it's 298 millimeters across, so a pretty good sized disc. Some cool looking lightweight wheels that are painted up. Again, they didn't sort of put bargain basement black wheels on here. You got some color matched wheels to the paint scheme, which is pretty cool. And then the tires really interest me because these are decent tires for the class. Now, these are the Dunlop Sport Max GPR 300F tires. What that means is my 950cc four-cylinder Kawasaki sport bike with Brembo brakes and a whole lot more power than this has the same tire as this. Now, I would argue that on my bike, they should probably upgrade, but the flip side is, having driven my bike, they're perfectly fine for all of that power and all of that braking, which means they are more than you need on a bike like this, and they also wear decently. So they have decent tread life on these. You can get something stickier if you wanted to, but that's an interesting piece. So right away, we can see from the front here, they are focused on spending their money to hit the price point. This is still a price point bike, but they're focused on spending their money on something that handles and feels great on the road, and that leads to a fun ride. So now let's take a look at the heart of this bike, and we're gonna get to riding position and all that in a second, but let's start with the engine here. So the engine here is a 321cc. So a lot of times people think something like the Ninja 400 is 399, and then this would be 100cc's less. It's not that far apart, but you know, the Ninja's gonna have a little bit more power. We're gonna talk about power and why power may or may not matter to you. But right here is your 321cc engine, and this thing is silky smooth, has really even power throughout its whole power band, and has a pretty nice sound for a small bike. All of those things add to the experience of riding, so you've got something that builds power efficiently, that also gets great fuel efficiency, and makes a nice sound through here. So twin cylinder engine, not a single cylinder like some other entry-level bikes, but twin cylinder, which gives you fast revving characteristics and makes it a lot of fun. Also, again, like I said, 6-speed transmission, so just like the bigger bikes, you're gonna learn to ride, you've got all the gears you need. One piece I want to point out here is when we talk about the smoothness of the engine here, first of all, you've got the little feelers on the bottom here, and you've got the steel pegs, which are a lot like sport bikes. A lot of times they'll put rubber pegs in to smoothen out the vibrations of the engine. This engine doesn't really have that many vibrations for what it is, and that means they can go with steel pegs, which is, again, race bike kind of look, but you also have these feelers here. If you think you can't scrape these feelers, I mean, maybe your skill level can't, but the bike absolutely can. You can lean this bike way over, and that's one of the joys of this bike, is that you've got everything you need here to have a great little handling package to really improve your skills, and it's so lightweight, it's a little bit more manageable. But yeah, those feelers are pretty long on this bike. Well, they're there for a reason. You can touch those without scraping everything else. So kind of a cool thing to have. Again, like I said, extra long feelers, so it's worth pointing out. But the point is, they can be used to lean this bike over and really have some fun with it. So let's talk riding position of the MT-03, because it really is one of the strong points. First of all, a little bit of a high kick over there, which I don't think is the end of the world, but you do have that sport bike style styling there. And that means you have a nice place behind you to sort of hold you in place if you want to get into a tuck type position and have some fun. I'm gonna put the kickstand up just so you can see where my legs go. One thing I really like about this bike is they put a wide tank on this. Now that may seem like it doesn't really matter much, but the wide tank allows you to fit different types of tank bags easily that are generally designed for a little bit larger bikes than this. Sometimes the small bikes really don't give you a lot of space on a tank for a proper tank bag, and then you have to use this rear area. Again, there's a ton of options to secure bags to this rear area, so if you want to do that, you can. And again, you have the ability to take a tank bag on here because it is pretty wide and pretty spacious. Now, the other thing that's really cool is, although the tank is wide, because this is a small bike with a small engine, you can make it very narrow. So when you compare specs, especially on an entry-level bike, you're gonna look at seat height, and you're gonna say one's taller, the other one's not taller. But especially on an entry-level bike, the ability to have a narrow bike means that you can have a higher seat height and a narrow entrance, and it'll feel lower, it'll feel more manageable. So seat height's not the best way to do it. You gotta sit on the bike, you gotta kind of see. And you can see I'm about 6 feet tall, but you can be way shorter than me and, you know, still be comfortable on this bike, you know, and support it quite easily. So a couple things you're gonna find. First of all, the weight is down low and centralized. It's very good, compact. They talk a lot about on the website about having a long swing arm. That's gonna help with handling, it's gonna help with things, but also keeps all that weight centralized, low, front, and down. And that means that this bike feels very manageable, very level, very balanced, very good that way. The other thing we're gonna talk about is the round handlebar. We'll get to that as we move to the dash. That's got some advantages for you. We'll talk about that. And then the overall seating position, if I put my feet up here, again, being a taller rider, sometimes when you have a big wide tank on a small bike, your legs kick out like this, but they don't. I fit perfectly fine underneath that tank cover there and hugged into the bike. And that's one of the things you're gonna want on a sportier bike. You're gonna want your legs tucked in comfortably on there. I also have all kinds of heel room. I don't have that on some other bikes in this class. So the overall fit is just very comfortable. And that leads into having fun on this bike. And we're gonna talk about the fun in a second, but let's move around to the dash now. Look at the cockpit view here. One thing I should mention while I am here, mirrors are very good. They easily clear my shoulders. I don't have any issues at all. Shoulders, arms, whatever it is, they clear them. So again, even as a larger rider than some people are gonna ride this bike, but you know, about 6 feet tall, not a huge rider, there's no issues with those mirrors clearing me, and that's just a nice thing to have. Visibility, everything about this feels like a big bike, but feels super nimble, and that's what makes this fun. Let's look at the dash now. All right, as we look at the dash, a couple things I want to show you before I turn the bike to the on position. First of all, you can see here, you have a handlebar. Again, it doesn't look super cheap. It has a bit of a metallic color to it. You probably can't see that in video, but it has a bit of a sparkle to it. What I like about a regular handlebar is if you want to mount your phone or some sort of GPS or some sort of something there, if you have a handlebar, it's just easier to do. So this one has that option. You can mount a quad lock or something like that if you wanted to. Real simple to do. Now, we're going to zoom in before we turn it on. You'll see there's two little red dashes over here at the top. That's actually your red line, and when you have the dash off, you realize that it's just permanently kind of painted onto or stuck onto the thing. It's not part of the digital dash. So your red line is shown there. When you turn the bike on, it kind of makes more sense. So we'll get that key tag out of the way there. There's your dash coming to life there. And this is a very clear, easy to read dash, and it is digital, but it's not a TFT display. So you have something that works well digitally, easy to see. Let's go through a couple things you see here. Coolant temperature there. You can see the bar graph, oil temperature there, or sorry, oil light there. You've got the fuel gauge over there. The bottom is, the clock says 5:13. That's not the right time. We'll check that later. But then you can select through. You've got your trip, you've got your regular odometer. You got sort of trip 1, trip 2. So we'll go back to fuel efficiency. So fuel efficiency is listed here in liters per 100 kilometers. I'm sure that can be changed if that's not what you want. Then that's the instant and average. So AVE for average fuel efficiency. So you can see your instant and average fuel efficiency. You can see if you're saving a little bit of fuel, which I think matters on a beginner entry-level bike. A lot of people are buying these bikes. It's a big first purchase for them. So I think, you know, getting good fuel efficiency matters, and the ability to help yourself out by keeping an eye on it kind of matters. So we'll just cycle through that again for you. Oops, hit the reset button there. Cycle through that again. So there we go. Odometer. Trip 1, trip 2, you can reset those, and then you've got liters per 100 kilometers, and then you've got the average liters per 100 kilometers. Now, what I would do is I would set my trip A and trip B. I reset trip A with every fuel, or trip 1, I guess, with every fuel stop, and I reset trip 2 with every oil change. That way you have a sense. Just if you're a beginner, there's a little tip that I use. You can do something else, whatever works, but that works well for me. ABS light is on there. I talked about ABS on this bike. It has it. Oil light's lit just because the bike is off. Neutral light's on. Let's turn the bike on for a second. You won't have it. I don't have it mic'd properly, so you won't hear it. We'll show you the start switch in a second. But it starts up, it's fairly quiet, but one thing I love when you rev through the rev range, and again, I haven't got it mic'd properly, I haven't got the right sound equipment, is it's very smooth revving and the sound builds really nice and evenly. I love the sound of this bike for an entry-level bike. So rev it up through here. It's got a really cool sound to it that sounds kind of angry in that mid-range where you're going to be driving it. And I really like that. Again, it's still a small engine, but it doesn't sound super wimpy. It's got a cool sound to it, and that's all part of the character of the bike. Let's show you a few more controls. I want to show you the lighting, and then we're going to wrap up by making sense of this all and really telling you who this is for, who's going to enjoy it, who's not going to enjoy it as well. So let's just take a look at the controls quickly. All right, I'm battling a little bit of bright sunshine here, but it's just a beautiful day outside. So first of all, there's your little trigger to flash your high beams. That is a really nice safety feature to have. They call it the flash to pass, but really just to make yourself a little bit more visible. Some people drive with their high beams on all the time. I don't find that that's the best way to do things. You know, I like to keep my low beams on and just sort of get people's attention by flashing if I need to. So that's kind of nice to have there with a flash separate from the regular high beam. And then you've got your signal lights here, signal lights there, and push to the center. Now I'm going to show you signal lights in a second. They do have marker lights in them. You also got the horn button over there, but those marker lights are sort of separate from the signals. We'll show you that in just a second here. Now, one thing you don't see here is a hazard switch, and that's because it's on the other side. Let's just show the other side right now. Throttle side, one thing I like is the start switch is part of the kill switch, which I think is kind of cool. Higher end bikes do that, so again, it gives that higher end bike feel. There's your four-way flashers. I think four-way flashers is really important on a beginner bike, but on any bike really. I like to stop and just check my directions sometimes and check various things. If you're gonna pull over for whatever reason, even if you had to pull over for like an ambulance going by, I like to throw my four-way flashers on because people are looking at the flashing lights of the ambulance on the left side coming by you. You pull over on the right side, and just to give yourself a little extra visibility, a little extra something, having those four-way flashers is kind of nice to have there. Throttle feels very nice here, typical, you know, nothing, you know, not too light, not too firm. Sometimes entry-level bikes, they try to lighten everything up. This feels the way it should. So overall, great feel to this bike. All right, the MT-0 whatever lineup all is known for their sort of aggressive looking face here. One thing I really like here though, and let's see, it doesn't turn on there without starting it up, so let's start it up. there is your headlight. It is a nice bright LED headlight, and the reason I'm filming on this angle and not in front is because you can see that roundness to this. If you look at a lot of high-end cars, behind the glass of the regular headlights, you have this round style light. So you have a really nice rounded style light. And again, at the angle I'm filming on, you can't see your daytime running lights over here, but you do have daytime running lights as well in there. Let's flip the view for just a second and see if we can show you the whole face. All right, now I want to be clear that the camera does not pick up the lights as well as your eyes do, and of course I'm filming into the sun right now, so that doesn't help as well. But you've got the marker lights here, which give you a little bit extra visual presence, and you've got an extra little single LED over here and over here, which is the yellow light, which I think is useful, especially at night, to give you a little bit more width. It allows the drivers, and again, they don't look bright here on camera, the camera adapts to them, but allows the drivers to see those two lights and tie them to a single headlight. So it doesn't blend in with a typical car, it actually helps you stand out. It's a little thing, but again, the people riding this bike are newer riders, maybe less experienced, driving at night for the first time on this. It gives you a little bit extra visibility. That's a great job, great money spent by Yamaha there. So let's talk about who this bike is for and what's great about it from a riding perspective. Now, first of all, one thing you're gonna hear is there's the Ninja 400 out there, and the Ninja 400 makes more power. And it becomes this discussion of, well, that because it makes more power, that's a better bike. Well, the reality is, you know, a 650 or an MT-07 or another thing, like there's always more power, right? You can always move to more power. What I think this bike does well is more power only matters if you're riding this full throttle. And I can tell you from just experience driving small bikes, you're not driving this full throttle all that often, especially if you're a newer rider. You may get to the point where there are times you go full throttle, but the flip side is when your bike gets too big, you can't go full throttle anymore and you kind of miss it. So what's fun about this is you can just go out and thrash it. And the whole idea of, with cars, it's fun to drive a slow car fast instead of a fast car slow. This isn't slow, especially compared to cars, but it is more fun to drive this fast, this at the limit, this up to red line, than it is to drive faster bikes slower. And that's the key to this bike. You've got to set up on this bike that from the factory, with the long swing arm, the upside down forks, from the factory is designed to be a great handling bike. It's also a very comfortable bike that has an appropriately low seat height, but still has high foot pegs that you can really get over in corners. Because it's lightweight, it's fun to drive, and that to me is the key. This thing is an absolute blast to drive with no intimidation factor whatsoever. This is a really, really cool bike. Is it a bike you're going to keep forever? Well, that depends. You have to be accepting of the fact that there are other bikes out there that are faster, that do a little bit more, that can wheelie in this kind of class a lot easier than this one can. I don't even know if this one, I'm sure it can wheelie, but it's not easy to wheelie on this bike compared to something like the MT-07 and moving on up to other things. This is a bike that Yamaha wants you to try, to learn, to get really good on, and then move up. There's no question about it. That's why it's in the lineup. What I will say is, I think people with bigger bikes can come down to this bike and learn a lot, because that's the whole key to bikes like this. You can really learn, you can really get good, and you can really surprise people with your skills by learning on this instead of a bigger bike. So to me, if you just want to have fun and speed isn't your ultimate goal, I think you can enjoy this for many, 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 many years. If you are of the impression that the only way to have fun is speed, this might not be the bike for you, but then again, I question some of your motorcycling thoughts and philosophies, because while speed is fun, if you can't have fun on a slow bike, then you probably aren't riding correctly. This thing is an absolute blast. So there you go. There's my review of the MT-03. Like I said, lots of smaller displacement bikes coming up on this channel soon. We're going to cover all of the 2024s as they arrive at dealerships, as they come in here. And if you have questions, I want to know it. I'm a huge fan of small displacement bikes. I love these things because they're so much fun. You can't get in a big bike what you get in some of these smaller bikes, and that's that fun revving feeling with the ability to have that lightweight handling that you just can't get on a bigger bike. So huge fan of these bikes. I'm excited that there's a bunch of them out and that there are more coming. And like I said, if you have questions, let me know. I want to thank McLean Sports. If you want to come see this bike, they've got a bunch in stock right now. We're going to talk about the MT-07 probably this week. So if you want to know what the move up on the lineup would be, we'll talk about that as well this week. So you can make sure you subscribe and see that. And again, McLean Sports here in Fredericton, New Brunswick. If you're anywhere in Fredericton and you're looking at a bike like this, or anywhere in New Brunswick and you're looking for a bike like this, they're the place to go. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll talk to you in the next one.